Malusi, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. What's happening to the properties you're dealing with? Are you finding there's a lack of demand for office space?
Yeah, look, I think there has definitely been a negative impact on demand for office space. I think what we have seen in the past 3 years of the pandemic is that it has actually drawn a line between what can be regarded as defensive sectors and non-defensive sectors in the market currently. And residential came out as actually one of the defensive sectors in the market, and which is why we're seeing quite a strong migration of capital investment, from other sectors into the residential markets. There are certainly a lot of opportunities in the conversion of some of the offices that have suddenly become white elephants into residential property. But just as there are opportunities, you are likely to find some challenges and some risk with it. So you have to strike a balance between the two.
Do you think some office companies, they're companies that specialize in letting offices, they're going to do all kinds of things to get people back? Some of it might well just be making an office a nice place to work, or just having, the best possible coffee.
Yeah, look, I do feel that there is definitely a drive, or there are some parts, I think, in the whole system that are obviously trying to pull people back to the office. But I think at best, as things currently stand, the hybrid model is the one that seems to prevail across corporate South Africa as well, even in the smaller businesses. And you're finding businesses allowing staff to actually come through on certain days. I think in our case here at FNP, we come through to the office probably about 3 days in a week. And then obviously 2 days we're staying at home. And some businesses have just gone completely virtual and kept core admin staff, in the office to just basically deal with some aspects of the business that require physical documentation signing, just like we're finding in the property markets too.
Some people are trying to change and convert office space into residential accommodation. Now, that may work. Some people may, for some reason, want to live in Sandton. But is there really a big market for those kinds of properties? These would be really fancy apartments.
Absolutely. There is a demand, and it is a huge demand, Stephen. But the key word is, where is the sweet spot? Okay, so you can obviously do an office to residential conversion in Sandton, but which market are you targeting? Which segment of the market are you looking to play in? If you're playing in the top end, there's all sorts of stresses there. But what we've actually found to be well received by the market is playing in the mid to the lower end of the market. There is a number of developments that we've obviously come to know in Sandton, where units or redevelopment actually ends up having units being sold for as 1 million rand and below. And no one has thought that one could actually find a very nice, beautiful unit in the middle of Sandton for as little as that. And again, there's also some developments, again, which are targeted to the rental market. And you find that the most successful ones and the ones that seem to generate a better, return are the ones that are targeted to the lower end of the market, where in a place like Sandton, you end up having rental opportunities for less than 5,000 rand. So, vacancies within those developments are very low, and the income is very sustainable. So it just basically becomes a very strong business case and a business thesis to actually invest, in residential in the lower end of the market, in what was previously regarded as the top tier, office nodes.
There's another issue to all of this, which is that a lot of companies had spent a lot of money on office space. So a company maybe it's a law firm. They would have spent a fortune, maybe not a law firm because it's hard to have sympathy for them, but it's a law firm. And they then have spent a huge amount of money on a massive, big office space, right? That's an asset. Now it's not worth the same amount of money, if you see what I mean. It's suddenly that value has disappeared. What happens then?
Yeah, look, what is a disadvantage to one is an advantage to another in this market. So for those firms, they've obviously had to experience an erosion in their capital investment of these assets. But then for developers, it means that the barriers of entry have actually lowered a bit. So they can actually buy these offices because half of them are vacant. And then obviously if you're buying them, you're going to be paying a lot lower, purchase price than you would when, the office market was buoyant. So these developers can come in, pay a low price, and obviously turn these assets around for a very good upside. But then again, on the side of the owner occupiers and investors that have actually spent a fortune in some of those buildings, I think the difficulty, even with the conversion, is to try and salvage some of the infrastructure that's already in the property. So you have to consider the floor plate, you have to consider the access from one floor to another, you have to consider facilities like your air conditioning, your waste, your IT infrastructure, and lighting. So if you can't salvage the bulk of such infrastructure, it becomes quite difficult. But maybe just to end on this point as well, Stephen, what this market has actually now forced a hand on the property owners and occupiers that have actually spent a lot of capital on their properties, and they're trying not to actually just basically lose it through an outright sale of those buildings. What has actually now happened is you're seeing a lot more collaboration between a seller and a buyer going into a JV to redevelop the property so that they can also be part of the upside. So obviously the biggest sellers currently in the market are the listed sector, and obviously they're selling quite a large stocks of these office components. And what you're finding, there are some JVs that are actually happening between the buyers and the sellers, and then everyone actually goes into an investment looking ahead.
Malusi Mthuli, thank you.